Hi, this is Anna Imagination with The Healing Garden. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Shifting Perspectives. So, I'm going to talk about the subtle art of feeling. And I'm going to actually use that as a title for my emotion classes, the subtle art of feeling. Because when we talk about feelings, it comes with the precise, oh my God, is it a precision? The precise articulation of what the feeling actually is and what it feels like. And this is where subtle precision is absolutely an articulated science when it comes to describing what we are feeling and then putting that into words. And because it is such a precise, subtle art, it is often handled improperly, and we end up communicating incorrect emotions, communicating incorrect feelings when we are trying to relay information. Right now, I'm going to talk about the feeling of alignment because it is, without a doubt, one of the most relieving feelings. When you feel alignment, relief is the primary emotion. It feels like a massive amount of pressure has been released. And suddenly feels like you've oiled a hinge in a door so that every time you open the door, there's this grating grind, and then you oil it and it just swings open. And it's a resistance. It's literally a feeling of acceptance versus resistance, where prior to the articulation, prior to the realization, prior to the lack of definition, there was resistance. And once you define and articulate the precision, suddenly it moves with magnificent ease to the point where there is relief and a feeling of absolute flow, like you've unstoppered an energy, like you have unstoppered a chakra that's been clogged and holding you back. And now I'm going to switch everything over to an example. I have been putting together a camp for Loveburn called Sunshine Imagination Adventures. And Sunshine Imagination Adventures is my own happiness that I just exude all over the place. It's one of my favorite things to do. And I wanted to go to Loveburn for about 3 years now. Since 2021, I wanted to go. 2022, I wanted to go. And now it's 2023. I wanted to go. Next year is coming in. And I've been trying for 3 years to go. I'm going to go this year. I had tickets last year or the year before, and COVID hit, and I never went. So I decided to do the whole freedom and do it. I scheduled it. I got the camp approved, and I had this immediate feeling of resistance where it wasn't easy. It wouldn't go off the ground. It wouldn't take off. It would just grind. And I felt overwhelmed. Not quite the emotion. No, definitely not the emotion. Not for me. It felt indifferent, lack of motivation. Suddenly, I don't want to. And I couldn't figure out the resistance. I thought it was interesting that I'd been excited for 3 years and then I didn't. So yesterday, I was talking to my partner, and I had this. I wanted to say something to him and I couldn't say it. And so I started beating around the bush, and I recognized my beating around the bush behavior. So I stopped talking to him and I said, I do this a lot where I want to say something to you, but I don't know what I want to say. The articulation and the subtle art of communicating precision in feelings matters. And I said to him, I'm going to stop talking because I can't quite, I want information from you. I want to communicate something to you, but I don't know what it is. So I'm just going to stop talking until I can figure it out. That was yesterday around this time. So here I am now on Tuesday, and I was exploring the feeling, and it finally just hit that going to love burn is not something I would enjoy unless it is something that I'm sharing with him. So if he's not there with me, it would be, yeah, it's okay. I had an all right time. But the amount of work and prep and effort that goes into something like love burn, it's involved, is not worth all the work unless I have a fucking great time. And I wouldn't have a fucking great time unless he was with me. So I couldn't justify putting all of the work into it if he's not even going to be there. And I was finally able to articulate in precise detail, I do not enjoy certain events without you. This is how I love. This is how I live. I still live my life separate from you. However, there are things that I'm just not going to get enjoyment out of unless you are there. And if you are not going to be there, then I don't want to do it. And it was this sudden realization that this thing that I was trying to push myself to go through with, I didn't even want. So I'm not going to go to Love Burn. I'm going to pull back on the camp and shut it down. And if it's something where, and he is not in a mental space to decide. So I'm not even asking him. He is just not in a mental space. And I also told him that. I'm like, you are not in the mental space to decide where you're going to be emotionally in February of 2024. So we're just not doing it. I'm not anyway. And I felt this massive realization as soon as I realized and accepted this about me. Because when you say it, when you finally articulate it, you accept your truth. This is why communicating your feelings is so important, is because your feelings are it's who you are. It's the defined self. And the thing is, it's not defined unless you say it. So you can either have the undefined self or you can have the defined self. And in order to transfer it from undefined or unknown to defined and known, you have to say it. Now, here's the thing. We have a fear of the unknown inside of us. So if we don't even know ourselves, technically, fear of the self is, or fear of the undefined self is also triggering fear of the unknown. So when all of those things come together, there's this massive amount of resistance. It's a massive burden. It's a massive amount of cognitive dissonance. And when you finally say it and you articulate it and you define it, it suddenly clicks and it runs and it's smooth. And it was this massive realization that I have a list of events that if I am not sharing those events with him, I have no interest in attending those events at all. And forcing myself to go to these events without him is just putting a massive amount of misery on myself. So the feeling itself of alignment, when you, leaving the example, going back to the point, when you get to a point yourself where you are ready to articulate and define yourself, the feeling that you are getting is that ease. It's equivalent to having a thorn in your foot and you feel the pain and the pressure and you pull that thorn out and suddenly there's no pain. And it's this sudden elation of just, oh, I can breathe. The burden is off of you. And once you become aware and sensitive to the subtle art of feeling, you can start to notice every single little undefined corner of yourself. You start to notice each and every little subtlety within and how much of you is and is not defined. And as you finally step in and you define yourself, it clicks things into place. And you suddenly have this massive understanding of, oh, that's where I am. This is where I belong. This is my calling. And it's this beautiful precision where basically you're honing it down. You start off with this massive block of wood or marble, and you're carving it down into this person. And the more you articulate and the more you refine your precision of communication, the more you can add the details. I was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art about 20 years ago, prior to 9/11, and I was in the Egyptian exhibit, and I had no idea these were actual, authentic pieces. I thought they were replicas because what's a pyramid doing in New York City? We have pyramids in New York City. And I was flabbergasted because there's a pyramid in New York City, a real one. They shipped it from Egypt. You don't have to go to Egypt to see a real Egyptian pyramid. And it was the first time I was at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. So I had no idea that this stuff was legitimate. I thought it was all replicated. So I'm looking at this statue and I could see, oh my God, the detail. The iris and the pupil. They carved the iris and the pupil into the statue. And then I looked down and they had fingernails. The little cuticle was literally carved into the statue. And I touched it. I'm like, ran my fingers over it. I'm like, oh my God. And then the security guard got really mad at me. That's when I realized it was real. I had no idea there was that much detail. But you are like that statue where words literally carve away and cut away all of the intricate detail of you. And the better you get at the subtle art of feeling and communicating the precision of what you are feeling, the more the statue's details come into being, so that you can really grasp and understand exactly what it is you are looking at and what it is you are dealing with. It is absolutely extraordinary. It is absolutely an extraordinary experience to have. And it's this, once you get to that point, you become so, the word I'm looking for, you become so sensitive to it. Sensitive is a really good word. You become so sensitive to it that you literally, and that's it. You become so sensitive to it that you just, wow. It allows you to articulate and refine so much of that detail, and that you get better at it and better at it. And then you can suddenly start to notice that there are multiple feelings happening, and not just like obtuse ones. And that's it. There are obtuse feelings, and then there are refined feelings. And you don't get to the refined feelings until you get to be around the 8th perspective. So if you're stuck at 5th perspective, 6th perspective, it's not until you get to the 8th and the 9th perspective that you really master the art of refining the precision of language. And it is this extraordinary awareness that just really penetrates you. And suddenly you see well beyond the obtuse emotion, and you start to realize the fractals of every emotion you experience. That's when you realize, oh, this emotion that I had over here isn't this emotion. It was this emotion. I did this the other day, yesterday, actually, where I had this, it was yesterday and the day before, where I had this massive realization of, oh my God, I have been jealous of my partner and his friendships for 2 years. but it didn't feel like jealousy because it was an evolved state of an emotion. So jealousy is here, and jealousy is an obtuse emotion, but it's got all these variations over here that are really refined and detailed. And I was feeling these emotions in this category, and they don't feel at all like jealousy, even though they are a subcategory of jealousy. No idea. Because it's not until you get to certain levels that you are allowed, that you have access to other types of emotions. And suddenly you realize that there is this refined precision to articulating these emotions. And you're feeling them for the first time because they become more and more refined. And like a palette, exactly like a palette, we have an emotional palette. Very much, we have an emotional palette. And this emotional palette prevents us at first of not being able to experience and not being able to feel certain things. And then the more intellectual you become, the more refined your emotional palette becomes. And that's what I've been trying to explain to everybody is you have an emotional palette, and most people are gorging on McDonald's food. And I'm over here having really something else entirely. And I'm trying to articulate and communicate. And I can finally say it. You have an emotional palette. We all do. And as you advance through the perspectives, your emotional palette is going to become more and more refined. And when you get to the eighth perspective, it's a game changer. You suddenly realize how inadequate all the communications, all the words are prior to that point. And suddenly you realize how important it is to be fucking precise on exactly what it is you are trying to say, because a word that you present with an obtuse palate at this perspective is going to set off the understanding a few degrees, so that as the trajectory continues, it's going to be so far off point in the future that you're going to have misunderstanding. And when you have misunderstanding, you're going to have a perspective gap. So once you understand the relationship between communication, perspective, understanding, and cognitive dissonance, pain, once you understand the relationship between those five things, suddenly your value in your appreciation for words is going to skyrocket, because use the wrong word and the whole thing falls apart, which is why there is so many people having so many misunderstandings today, because they are not comprehending the severity of word precision, because the emotional palette is so obtuse. So that communication, your perspective, understanding, cognitive dissonance, and emotional pain are all solely dependent upon the words you use. Suddenly, it matters if you don't have a refined emotional palette. Suddenly, it matters if you cannot communicate a very basic emotion. And ironically, consequently, we are in a society where we are not taught how to even communicate the most basic of feelings, let alone this massive conglomerate. On Tuesdays, when I do my Journey into the Self workshops, I talk about communication, boundary setting, and emotions. There is a very deliberate strategy as to why I have communication, boundary setting, and emotions all in the same course. It's because they are the same topic. It is very much the same thing. Your emotions and your communication of those emotions is the crux of all of your problems, because it becomes down to understanding and your ability to articulate yourself to other people. People use words. They're using the wrong words because they have an obtuse palate. You don't understand. you articulate and you try and communicate back to them, they're not understanding. It's literally, and this is what no one's talking about, it's literally, it's as if we are speaking different languages. Imagine that you speak French and everybody around you is speaking their own language because you're coming from a different perspective. And because we have not refined this universal language of all the perspectives, you're not able to make yourself understood and you are not understanding other people. So when you set a boundary, most of the time they don't even realize you've set a boundary. Other times they don't give a shit if you've set a boundary. They say things to you and it makes you think, oh, their intentions are good and I can trust them because they're using the wrong words. But if you actually understood the refined art of articulation, you would be able to pick up on the subtleties that they're actually saying to tell you that is not what they mean. What they actually mean is this. For instance, a narcissist saying, I need you. That is so imprecise. When someone tells you they need you, really finish the sentence. I need what? I need you to go to the store. I need you to what? What does it mean? I need you. Really think about this. They need to use you. They need to use you. That's the rest of the sentence. But we're so used to hearing the words, I need you, that we don't plug in that they're actually saying, I need to use you. One of the worst, most ugly, horrible things in this world is the phrase, do you want to come with? With what? Do you want to come with a chainsaw? Do you want to come with my clothes? Do you want to come with the store? Do you want to come with a cat? Come with what? And there's this concept of, well, the implication was that do not ever trust implication. Implication is the core of miscommunication. Say what you mean and be precise. Because the moment you enter into the world of misunderstanding, you enter into perspective gap, cognitive dissonance, pain, misalignment, and it is so subtle. You're already working with a blunt emotional palette. Refine this art form. If you love shit like this, like, subscribe, follow below, comment, let me know what part of the show resonated with you, donate to the garden, help the garden grow, and take a look at my Linktree account. Browse the menu. I have a lot going on. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.